For this project, I am using watercolor paper, and to make sure that it doesn't ripple or curl, I'm going to tape it all the way down to a piece of wood, or you could do it to a desk as well. I am using just masking tape, and I'm trying to get part of it on the edge of the paper and part of it on the board. Then I have my watercolor paper ready to go in a tray. Now, the first thing I want to do is create this glow, and I'm going to do that by getting my paper wet just in the middle, and then I'm adding a little bit of yellow to the water, and I want to just kind of work it out from there. I don't want it to be very, very bright yellow in the middle. I just want it to get a little bit brighter or darker in color as it gets farther out. And I'm doing this painting by using different values of kind of this golden yellow color. It'll be a little bit of mixture of yellow and orange, and so I want this to be kind of my lightest area. I'm going to start kind of pretending that I'm making a sun, right? So I'm just going to make these lines that go away from the middle all the way out towards the outside edges of my paper with yellow. And you can see that because I didn't get it wet, the color is a little bit stronger. And I'm just going to continue doing this all the way around my paper until I have the whole thing with some color. And this is another reason why it's great to have the tape, because at this point my paper is trying to curl, but the tape is holding it still. I'm going to work even around the bottom too, although I will be covering up the bottom mostly with some other things, and so it really doesn't matter too much as long as the bottom has color on it so that I'm not trying to paint over white later. I'm also trying to avoid the middle of my paper here so that that does not get filled with any darker color. I'm trying to go all the way up to the edges. I can even add a little bit of orange coming in between some of my yellow marks just to darken it a little bit. For the orange, I'm starting on the outside. My paint is still wet, so it's kind of blending or bleeding into the yellow, and I don't mind that at all. I'm going to do that around the outside edges, pretty much all the way around, so that I get a little bit of a variety in there. So I've got the super light lights, and then I've got the yellows, and then I've got the oranges as well. Now I also want to remove a little bit of paint after I'm done adding the orange, just so that I can make it even a little bit lighter. And because my paper is still really wet, I can do that. So I'm going to take either a paper towel or a Kleenex or something. I'm going to grab that and pull it from the middle towards the outside. And that will just kind of make some like streaks of light. So you can kind of turn your paper towel around a couple different ways so that you're getting like a dry spot each time. And I'm just going to kind of pull out this light from the middle. And since my paper's wet, it works. All right, I have to let my paper dry. So this is coming back with a dry paper. And now I'm ready to add some more details. And the first detail I want to do is Jesus as he's rising into the sky. Now I'm going straight in with a paintbrush, but if you're more comfortable, you could actually use like an orange marker for this if you want a little bit more control. I'm finding though, if I just have a pointed brush, I should be good. I'm starting with an oval and then adding a line right underneath the oval. Let me zoom in so you can see. And then I'm going to bring that line down a little bit to make kind of like a trapezoid shape. That's for the top part of Jesus's body. Then I'm going to bring that line down and make kind of like the bottom of a robe. So you can kind of make it a little bit of a wavy line at the bottom. And I'm going to fill that in. And this is really orange mixed with brown. Then I'm going to add some arms by just making two lines that kind of curve out from the shoulders. And then I'm going to make it look like the sleeves, so I'll bring those down like so. Very basic shape. This could also be an angel if you wanted to make it an angel, but because we're making Jesus ascending, we're going to turn this into Jesus. All right, I want to make it look like he has maybe longer hair, so I'm going to bring that down. I also want to add a little bit of hand kind of poking out of his sleeve. So it's just like a little line, nothing too fancy here. Just using the tip of my brush, and then I'm adding some feet by the same way, just adding kind of these little lines that are poking out from underneath the robe. And I think I'm gonna let that be for now. And I wanna start adding in some clouds. And to do the clouds, I wanna go back to my yellow. This time I'm using kind of a more golden yellow. If you don't have a golden yellow, you could just mix yellow with a little bit of orange, and that would work. And I wanna start near Jesus, not right next to him. And I'm just making these bumps that kind of go a little bit off to the side, and they're going to go all the way up to the top. And then while they're wet, I'm just going to add a little bit of water. I'm going to dip my brush in water and kind of just go right up to the bumps and then kind of pull out away from the bumps. This kind of makes it blend out into the background. So I'm adding some water, and then I can add a little bit more paint too if it's not covering up what I had from underneath. And I'm just kind of making this idea of this golden cloud. Remember, we're sticking with the warm colors today. It's a great value practice. So I just wanted to do something kind of like that. I'm kind of liking how that's looking, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side as well. Let me zoom out so you can see. And I'm going to start maybe up at the top, and then again, just kind of make those like C-shape bumps. You can make big ones, small ones. I like to kind of do a variety so they're not all the same size and shape, and it can kind of curve in towards Jesus without going right up next to him. It just kind of gets close. And then the same thing, I'm going to add a little bit more paint and a little bit more water and kind of like scrub my brush almost to get this kind of feeling that there's clouds coming out to the side on either side. I'll do that up on the top. I'm making sure to go right up to my line so that there's not even a line there anymore. Notice I'm going right over my tape too. I'm mixing a little bit more orange into my yellow, so I have another a little bit of a darker value, and I'm going to make some more bumps that kind of are a little bit farther away. So these are a little bit darker, and they go a little bit farther out to the side. And the same thing goes, I'm going to kind of darken that area and make my brush go right up to that line and kind of fill in the sky with those bumps. I'm going to bring that down a little bit lower this time. So it looks like it goes kind of under where Jesus is. Now, if you really wanted to, you could take this value to the next level in the clouds, and you could do like 3 or 4 values in the clouds alone. So I might add a little bit of red or a little bit more orange if I wanted to get darker and darker and darker as I get farther away from Jesus. You can see I'm adding a little bit more red or orange to my yellow, and I'm doing the same thing now on the other side, just making some bigger bumps, some smaller bumps that go all the way in towards the middle. And then I'm going to take my brush and pull some of that color down and to the left. Notice that my brush is going all different directions. You can kind of make some swirly brush strokes if you want. That is up to you. I can add a little bit more red the farther away that I go to kind of increase the value. Make it a little bit darker. I'm trying to get all kind of soft edges, so I don't want any lines showing. I can go even darker along the bottom here. So I switch back to my bigger brush, and I just want to fill this whole bottom area with a little bit of a darker color. That way, when I keep adding darker and darker values, it won't be as hard to cover what's underneath. I'm even adding a little bit more red way down in the corners. So I've got the very light lights behind Jesus, then I've got kind of the medium lights, and then I'm getting a little bit darker the farther away I get. This would also be a time if I wanted to make darker clouds, I could kind of throw those in here too. They don't have to be as perfect, maybe they're not as defined, but if you want to have, all the little bumps like the other ones, you could do that too. It is up to you as the artist what you would like to add. So I do want to add just a little bit of a line, I guess, between my dark areas. So I'm just kind of throwing that in. If it's not really defined everywhere, that's okay. I'm making sure to bring the darks all the way down to the bottom edge of my paper. All right, I'm going to let that be for a little bit, and I want to add a little bit more detail to Jesus. So I'm going in with brown and my small brush, and I'm putting his hair in. I'm also adding a belt to his robe with brown. I'm going to make his hands a little bit darker, so then it makes his robe look a little bit lighter. I'm also going to darken his feet. And then I think I want to add like a sash or something kind of coming across his robe like so. So I'm just going to do that from one side to the other. That is totally optional. You don't have to add it if you don't want. But I thought that will give him a little bit more detail and make him look a little bit more lifelike. All right, at this point, I am going to mix some red and some brown. And I want to make a darker value than what I have already on my paper. So red mixed with brown will give me kind of a nice color. You could also do some orange with brown too if you'd like. I'm going to do red with brown. And I'm trying to make some people. So what I want to do is I want to start with heads, and then they should be bigger than Jesus's head. If it helps, you could just make a bunch of floating heads all the way across your paper. Now, it's better if your paper is dry. You can see, because my paper is not dry, my second and third heads that I drew are starting to bleed into my clouds, and I don't really want that. So if you are not patient and you just want to dive right in, you may have issues with some of the shapes kind of bleeding out into the clouds. Like I am having that problem with these ones right here. You can kind of go over it like I am and see if you can define the shapes a little bit more, or you can just be patient and let it dry. Usually if you can still feel a little bit of coolness on the paper, then it's not quite dry enough, where if it feels more warm, then it's ready to go. I also sometimes like to speed up the drying process by using a hair dryer. That can kind of help move things along. So if you've got a hair dryer handy, it works really well for drying watercolor. All right, I'm just going to add some figures, some indication of people that are watching Jesus ascend into the sky. And as you can see, my people are not fancy, right? I have a head and a body. I don't even have arms on most of them. I don't have too much detail on them. I just want to keep it very basic. So I'm making kind of an oval shape for a head. I'm making a line for shoulders and then drawing the body underneath just by painting kind of down. If I want, I can throw some arms out to the sides just a little bit, like maybe the people are touching one another. Maybe it's a parent and a child, or maybe a husband and a wife that are standing next to each other. So feel free to be, fancy or creative with those types of things. I also, as I'm doing these people, want to kind of do them in clusters or groups because it wouldn't be natural for people just to stand in a perfectly straight line and all equally distant from each other. So I'm going to have some that are closer together. I'm going to have some that are farther apart, leave some spaces between them, have some people that are taller, some people that are shorter, and I kind of want to make them a little bit smaller and higher up as I get towards the outside of my paper. So you can see these over here are a little bit higher up and the heads are a little bit smaller to make them look like they're farther off in the distance. They also kind of make a nice curve that kind of goes well with the cloud shapes in the sky. So I'm going to make a couple more people over on this side. And again, it's just a red and brown mixture. If they all kind of blend together, that's totally fine. It's supposed to just have kind of the idea of a group of people. Now, as they go farther off to the side, maybe I could throw like a beard or something on a couple of them like I am on these just to make it look like maybe they're men that have their beards. They're looking up at Jesus. Now, when I get to the point where I pretty much have people all the way across the paper, I now want to move to a darker value. So instead of the red and the brown, maybe I'll mix like a tiny bit of black into my color as well so that it creates a little bit of a darker variation. So I'll have red and brown and a little bit of black that I can mix on my palette and bring that in for the next round. So you can see just by putting my first person in here in the middle that that value is darker than the one before it. So it makes the people feel like they're closer to me. So as I make the second row of people, I'm using this darker value, which is the red and the brown, mixed with a little bit of black, and that can create that darker value for me. And I'm going to add people a little bit lower down on my picture than the ones that I already have on there. You can decide where you put them, if you want them to overlap, if you don't, if you want them to be a lot or just a couple. It's really up to you as the artist. I do encourage you to have some that are touching or overlapping just because that's how people naturally stand. I'm going to go ahead and do this layer of people all across my paper as well with this little bit of a darker value. I'm still not going to be adding a ton of details to them. I'm not going to be getting too fancy. I'm just going to pretty much have head and bodies, and then I can always, throw a beard or an arm or something on there if I would like, just to give it a little bit more definition. All right. I could stop there and be done, but I think I want to go one step farther. So now I'm going to get to pretty much using straight black. This is the darkest value that I will be using on my picture for the people that are very close to the bottom of my paper. So the darkest darks. Again, I'm just kind of starting in the middle. I'm making sure that my value is darker than the ones that are in front of it. And I'm just going to fill out the rest of my picture with these dark, dark silhouettes. And the reason I like to do this is because then I have kind of that full range of values on my picture. I've got the super lights by Jesus, and then the clouds get a little bit darker as they get towards the bottom of the paper. And then again, I've got the people too that get darker yet. So my light values, my medium values, and my dark values, making kind of this nice full value scale on my painting. And because I'm simplifying the colors, it works really well. It's kind of nice just to be using these warm colors and not worrying about the actual colors that would have possibly been there. So it kind of gets this neat mood or this neat vibe in the painting as it kind of comes together. So I'm just filling in the rest of the areas with these dark, dark people silhouettes. And it's kind of nice too because I can cover up things that maybe I didn't like so much about my previous layer. So you can really have fun with that. You can add arms, you can, add extra details like beards or maybe head pieces or head coverings, but I'm really trying to get nice and dark with that. After my painting's dry, I'm going to take my tape off. I'm making sure to pull away from my picture when I remove the tape, and you'll see it creates a really nice crisp white border on my picture, which I really like as well. And there you have the finished piece, the Ascension of Jesus. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this watercolor tutorial. For more tutorials, head on over to Elke Art. And yeah, I hope to see you again soon.